Hello everyone, this is Regular. Thanks for being here today. In this small video, let's take a look at what a share replay operator is when you work with Reactive Angular. To check on the definition, share replay operator will help you when you work on the observables. In which way? When you create an observable, you have to subscribe to an observable to handle the response, right? So now the question is, what happens when you have a multiple subscriptions to a single observable? You might end up with making a multiple HTTP calls behind the scenes. Share replay will help you to limit that. At the same time, it will help you to share the respective subscriptions value to all the active subscribers we already have. To keep the definition very clear, let's take a look at a demo time. There you go. Let's create a new Angular project with the command ng new and share replay demo as such. Feel free to create with any of your choice for the project name. Go with the default settings for the style sheet and server-side rendering, so it will create you a sample hello world Angular skeleton code. Perfect. The project has been created. Let's get into the project from in your CLI and do npm start just to make sure to check on the application running. There you go, and this is exactly how your sample hello world skeleton code looks like in terms of output. Perfect. So now let's kill your CLI's thread and let's create a service. Why do we need to create a service? So in Angular, every time you make an HTTP call or every time you handle observable, service is the one that will help you to handle all your backend communications. In order to create a service in Angular, you can try ng generate service and then specify any specific folder name if you want to keep all the services at one folder, all the components into another. I would really suggest to do so. The more modular your project code is, the better is for the developer experience. So ng generate service, let's keep our services inside service folder and let's name it as user data. Perfect. So the services has been created and you can take a look at in the source inside app, you will see our services folder. Perfect. User data service is our standard service that we just created. Let's inject HTTPs because we need to make an API call from our service to our backend API and import our HTTP client. Perfect. Now, since we are making an API call, what is our backend URL, correct? So that is must to have. Let's pick something from the Google so that we don't need to worry much about our backend implementation now. So the most easiest one that I always go for is JSON placeholders. So let's take it this lookup this API which will give you a list of users as a JSON objects. So copy this URL, go back to our VS Code and just paste it here. We'll go back to the URL again to examine the data because we need to create a multiple subscriptions to handle that response. Perfect. So in the user data service, we have an API, we have a constructor. So let's create a function as you get user data, which is an observable of any for now, which returns this dot HTTP, which makes a get API to this endpoint. Perfect. That is it. It's not at all a rocket science. One function that would make an API call, which returns an observable to this specific endpoint. Perfect. Now let's go back to our application component, app component.html and app component.ts. So whatever code you see in app component.html is exactly the same code that we have in here. You see this piece, this is all coming from this app component.html. So let's take everything off. We don't need it for now and just do a sample hello for the viewers. Perfect. Let's go to our app component.ts. This is where most of our work around the APIs, observables, and subscriptions will go. Let's create Okay, before we create or before we work around the observables, since this is app component and we see there is no ng on in it, no constructor, because we might need to add some skeleton code for here to handle our application's functional logic. Let's do implements on init. Ng on init is a function. Perfect. So in every time you want some action to be performed, the moment your application triggers, I think that piece of code should be part of ng on init. So we have ng on init here. Let's also create a constructor and make sure this app component.ts has access to our data service that we just created. So the way we can do inside a constructor, let's do a user data service is user data service. Perfect. So this is the value where our data service has access to. Perfect. So inside on init, let's do a const users list, which is an observable. So we use that dollar as a representation, and let's invoke the function that we have in our service. So which is get user data dot get user data. Perfect. User data service is a reference of our service we just injected here, and we are calling get user data function which is in that service. Perfect. So let's have a console log and check if you're getting that is observable response back to our browser. Console.log, this is users list, and just log it as users list. Perfect. Let's run the application back with the command npm start. There you go. On the other side, if you observe, cool, there is no API or a backend API call is being made, and in fact we were also unable to see our hello viewers heading. The reason, since this is a standalone component which is a part of most recent Angular version, we need to explicitly provide our HTTP client to our project. You can also observe that in our console here. See, no provider for HTTP client. Let's go to app.config.ts. You will see a list of providers your project would need. Go here, just add another provider HTTP client and save. Perfect. If you go back to our browser, there we go. We see observable that returned from our service, and also we see our heading. Perfect. Now let's create a couple more observables, and let's subscribe to that in our HTTP. Sorry, in our app component.html. There you go. So let's create another observable as usernames. Oops, let's do a usernames as any and user emails as any. Perfect. So now let's comment this guy. We don't need it, or we can also remove this one. So we are also able to get that console. Let's derive a usernames list of usernames from this observable. So let's do this dot user names equals, let's do users list dot pipe, and let's do mapping for all the users, and again users dot map user tends to user name. Okay, so this has to be like this, and we should make sure what is the return type of this user, right? That's how this mapping will pick exactly the same value. So let's do that username. I think we might also need to import RxJS because map is a part of RxJS library. Perfect. It seems good. We have an observable which is here, but how can we bring this data back to our HTML, right? There is an interesting another operator by using pipe here. So let's do usernames like this, and then you can use pipe symbol and write async, ASYNC. So async is an operator that took care of automatically subscribing to our observable and bring the data in. Seems like there is an issue. The reason we have to import the common module when you're working with pipes. Perfect. If you see, common module has been imported. User names from the app component. Did you mean, what does it mean? Okay, so the dollar symbol is missing here. Perfect. You see, because it's an observable, we have to denote that with a dollar symbol. Now, if you observe on your browser, did you see, we see this, some sort of response is coming from our observable, which is good. But why it is not the names? Let's take a look at our data once. So this is our Angular, sorry, the JSON API. We have this name, username, and email. Username, all small letters. Let's take a look. Go to our app component.ts. Take a look at the initial list of users is users, and we are making a mapping for a single user among all the other users we have. What is that is missing here? If you come back, okay, there you go. So it has to be the user.username, not users, right? Because we are again iterating among the users as user. Now if we switch back to our browser, we see all the usernames coming from that specific API, and through a service call that we did, which is an observable. And the other observation here on the Chrome, if you go back to your network, see, it makes a one API call, which is a list of all JSON objects, and over there we just filtered all the usernames, which you can see it on the browser here. Now what's the catch here? So this is one observable which derived from this. Now what happens if we have similar like this? So let's do user emails, and just to save our time, just simply copy this guy and paste. Instead of saying username, just do email. And here it is, email. Perfect. Because the reason we had email, we have this email value in the response. Now if you go back and refresh, well, yeah, we still have one because we haven't showed this on our HTML. Go back to your app component.html, and just like we did for usernames, let's do one for the HTML as well using async pipe. Perfect. So in our HTML, we have two different observables that are subscribed by using async. And if you see the response, it makes a two different API calls, correct? Which is not always necessary, because your application might make unlimited API calls to your backend, and that doesn't mean your front end has to handle all those, since you know the same data is coming all over. Now the core magic of shareReplay comes here. Let's go back to our service where you created an observable, and just do dot pipe, and inside pipe let's do shareReplay. Done. I think quick fix would be to import RxJS here as well, and remove this guy. I'm sorry. Perfect. Now if you go back and see, you still get the detailed values of both the email IDs and the usernames. Let me do a small quick break so that it's easy for you to observe. Let's do a break line. There you go. See, first we have all the usernames, and we also have all the user email IDs, but the catch is you just made a one API call from your front end. Perfect. That is all, guys. See, now the single shareReplay adding to your observable made a significant impact. So all the subscription values will be distributed or shared to all the active subscribers as long as you make a one API call from your front end to back end. Perfect. Thank you very much, guys. If you have any questions, feel free to comment, and I'm so happy to respond you back. And also please subscribe, comment, and share. Thank you, guys. Hope you